Sunday, and I'm just going to back up here because the ring light makes for Terminator eyes, right? If you have glasses. I suppose I could take out my glasses and maybe I'll do that in a bit. But I just wanted to keep in touch as far as ceramics goes because I'm working on larger pieces, so maybe there will be more posts, maybe there will be less posts. But while I'm taking a little bit of a break from the smaller stuff, aside from the things that I do need to take care of, I thought I would keep addressing what I'm doing. Anyway, you might have seen that I'm working on these giant hens, turkeys, a la German ceramics. What was his first name? I'm trying to think. Candler. Candler is his last name. And my friend Peter turned me on to this crazy series of birds and parrots. And if Joseph Candler, I do believe, maybe, possibly. A lot of these crazy porcelain pieces, they got lots of cracks in them, and I have never shied away from cracks. Like, it's like scars, things of beauty. If a piece survives a kiln, it's so hard, and I know I'm going to get kickback for this, but like, what percentage of pieces should still exist, like say after a wood kiln or a soda kiln, or things crack, and then you can put the kintsugi thing on there if you can do that if you want to. But if you look up Candler, K-A-N-D-L-E-R, on the internet, you will find a bevy of really interesting pieces, but they've got some striking cracks in them. I'm only imagining that these pieces lived among royalty, among society figures, and I know you won't be able to see this piece because, you know, glare with laptop, but just to give you, I posted it before, and I'll post it alongside the post that I do today. But I just wanted to kind of keep you abreast, turkey abreast, chicken hen abreast of what I was doing. But prior to that, I thought I would talk a little bit about what's going on, a couple things, what's going on. I finally pulled out my Rodecaster Pro recorder mixer board. I've had it since the beginning of the pandemic, really. And I wasn't going to do a podcast called Electric Lady Orchestra because I felt like there were suddenly a million podcasts out there. And then I thought, that's okay. You can just talk into the microphone and maybe somebody will tune in. So I experimented yesterday with my friend Idris Kabir Syed, who is a lifelong amazing friend of mine from Kent, Ohio. I went to grad school and he wasn't an undergrad. He's like a graduate of you name it. He's been a counselor. He's a professor in Pan-African Studies. His posts are most amazing and inspiring, and he did get his MFA in ceramics as well under Kirk Mangus, or alongside Kirk Mangus eventually. And so he's one of my nearest and dearest, not the longest time friend that I have, but he's, you know, we're up there. We can hang together. I recorded something with him yesterday, and of course, because technological boo-boos happen, even though I spent the entire morning into the afternoon trying to make this work, the first part of it did not upload because I was using a platform that only lets you record in 30-minute segments. So I got the second segment just fine, but now I have to pin him down in his busy life to record the first part. But basically we talk about podcasts, we talk about art, we talk about food, we talk about Kirk Mangus. And so, like I mentioned, maybe in the second part or the first part, but I know he's busy and he doesn't necessarily need to be my co-host, but I would love to be his Andy Richter or his Ed McMahon or somebody more politically correct, I'm sure. But it's kind of nice to have somebody to bounce a conversation off of who knew Kirk, who knows me very well too, and has a deep love of food and ceramics. So I'm hoping that he'll chime in. And we have all sorts of emotional flaws in common too, which is why I love him dearly. But anyway, back to what's happening here. If I take a day off of ceramics, like being in the studio, holy shit, I'm a crabby son of a poo-ha. So I needed to get back down here today and do a little something something because it was making me crazy. I think it's fair to disclose that these pieces that I'm working on, they're all going to go to a show, which is, it's still yet to kind of be determined how it's going to roll out, but it's going to be in the New York area in the fall, and I'm working closely with a couple of people / dear friends too, and I don't feel like I'm at liberty to talk too much about it, but I am sort of recreating a lot of hysterical things that are out there in the world that really need to be out there in the world again in their new ways. So those kooky candler hens or turkeys or hens is what I'm working on. But what I wanted to talk a little bit about first was is the glazes that I use. So glazes and such that I use. And in the presentation that I did, oh, I should also mention that the Electric Lady Orchestra is going to be through Spotify. I'll see if iTunes will accept my submission once I get a full episode up, and that might be easier for people to handle. But you can sign up for Spotify for free and but there's just a little trailer up there for now. But I'll try to put it on like, is it Apple Podcasts or whatever it's called. Anyway, now I lost my train of thought, but that will pop back into my head. What I did want to talk about though are like some of the materials that I use. Oh yes, in the presentation that I gave for Heartwood College, thank you again very much. And that presentation is on my website, and you can listen to 2 versions of it if you would like. One was a morning presentation where I drank a lot of coffee, not unlike what I'm doing right now. And so that's recording number 1. And then the second recording is of the Zoom actual presentation. So like 2 takes on it, and I'm happy if you want to share that or do whatever. I feel a burp coming on. Yeah, mid-afternoon burp. So back to this. In the presentation, what I talked about was a fabulous teacher that I had when I was going to the Alberta College of Art, now the Alberta University of the Arts apparently, an artist named Mireille Perron, and we used to have critiques. And I remember, God, she would be like, I don't want to talk about kitchen talk. And I remember when she just shut us down. Like, she has a background in ceramics too, but she does all sorts of other fabulous work and conceptual work. So we were like, what are we going to talk about other than just clay and glazes? Because that's our wheelhouse, right? So over the years, I have learned to talk about more of the ideas behind pieces as opposed to what goes into the background, and sometimes I forget. So I find sometimes when I'm asked to do a workshop and such, I get a little bit, I forget that like I should talk about that as well. I use all sorts of materials. I tend to use Tucker's. I tend to use Tucker out of I should maybe pivot this a little bit more so you can see the hens and not so much me. But I tend to use Tucker's clay out of just outside of Toronto, and for my throne wares I use bright white. And then like I work so freaking slowly, and I'm a terrible thrower, so I have lots of trimmings, so I'm always like recycling everything, so I'm not wasting anything by any stretch of the imagination. But I also bought like some like mid porcelain clay bodies, mid Porce 5, I think it's what it's called, so it's got a little bit of texture to it. Again, probably with my coil building prowess or not, it's okay. Like sometimes I fire things too fast. Touch wood, I don't have that many blow-ups, but sometimes I have cracks and I don't care. Like I just work with it. Like I just work it into the whole design of things. It's not the end of the world. So that's what I use for the clay body, and I have experimented with a couple of cone 5-6 clear glazes, and the last one I'm using is like I have to look over here. It's like a Soto Clear, I believe it is, and that's from the Rat City Ceramics, Deb Schwarzkopf out of Seattle. Thank you for your recipe, Deb. It needs some Epsom salts added to it, otherwise things fall to the bottom. But that was super easy enough to figure out. Again, most of what I talk about is found in my website, www.foreststudios.com. If you go to the about section and then drop down to the Start Techie section, you can see links to things there. What I use for actual glazes, so I actually bisque fire everything, and what I've done is I'm faking myolica. I could make myolica, and there's always a pun in there. My what? Your what? Myolica, your olica. But I don't use myolica all that often, and you know, myolica was, and I know I'll be corrected on this, but until everybody got to enjoy porcelain on a wide scale, Europeans developed this like thick white glaze, tin based, that mimicked porcelain, sort of covering coating glaze, and then went from there. I love it. I think it's so wonky, but I don't use it that often, and it's incredibly fussy, right? It's like painting on icing sugar, and I was like, ugh, this is making me crazy. So what I did was, my glaze of preference these days is good old Mako Stroke and Coats Wonder Glazes. I'm not paying for this. I'm just telling you that that's what I use in addition to, and like I use Amico stuff, and I use Spectrum stuff, and I use, you name it, I'll slap it on there. But what I find is that I've actually given these hens like a good triple coating, like with a big, ooh, unctuous, I like that word, brush of cottontail white, and I just let that sit on there for a little bit till it dries up, and then it's like my base for whatever. So a lot of these pieces I fire multiple times. Like most of these sculptural pieces, they'll get fired like 10 times. Easy peasy. 1, 2, 3, easy. So what I'm going to do is treat the cottontail white base as a sort of fake myolica base. And again, it's just because I don't have too much experience with the myolica, but I have all these pots of, I eat a lot of cream cheese, it seems. So I kind of dump things in there, let them dry out all the time. And then I just dump a little water in there and let it sit for a few minutes. And then like it reconstitutes, right? So I've got one bucket of good kind of clean water, and I'm going to just take a minute to do this because I should have done this before, but that's okay. That's okay. So it only takes a couple minutes for things to reconstitute, and according to the picture that's there, and again, when I'm recreating historical ceramics, I'm not doing it to a T. There's no way I want it. Well, there's a couple of pieces, like the boar's head tureen that I did. I really wanted to make that to a T, but I'm not particularly now. So what I'm going to do, just for time's sake, is just mix the few glazes mix up the few glazes that I'm going to need to start doing the base in particular. What I love about, again, not being paid, but what I love about Mako Stroke and Coats is their flexibility. And this did not exist when I was an undergraduate student. So you can use them at many different temperatures. I find that they start to flux and fuse at cone 04. And then apparently you can take them up to like cone 9, 10. I think probably the reds and yellows fade a little bit. Do not quote me on this. But I fire them at 5, 6, and I find them to be quite stable. And you can layer them on at this stage. So bisque with the glaze on top, or like you can put them directly, as I do with my mugs, I put them directly onto the piece and then dunk them in clear glaze. You can also, I found, like refire them, but I find it hard if you've fire them lower, like to say 04, and then take them back up to cone 6 or something like that. Sometimes there's a shivering that happens. What I also like is that you can fire them onto like commercial like plates and such too. So if you want to work, not that that's just necessarily a kid venture, but I found that to be a really interesting thing. So again, as long as you like fire them at cone 04, take them down, do your decal deco work, your gold luster work, they seem to be quite interesting. I also, like back in the day, it was so hard to retain the notion of reds and such, and yellows. They're what we consider, or what I consider, or what we consider fugitive colors, colors that burn out quite easily. I find that they're very, very stable. So I'm very, very lucky to have suffered through like the pre-Mako stage or Wonder Coat, Stroke and Coat stage, and then come out the other end to realize a much better and happier future. So again, oftentimes I see historical ceramics, I'm like, oh, I really want to make that. Oh, I just want to remake that. And I do a little light research, but that was like made in like probably the late 18th century. I don't know that technology, and I'm never going to recreate that technology, and it's not of interest to me to be like that much of a geek, as much as a geek that I am. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on, just for a couple minutes, is like the bottom part of things. Well, maybe the top part of things too. The top part of the necks, according to the picture, are sort of a purpley color, and they seem dabbed on, and they seem like they have white blotches on there. And I'm sure there's, like, I could do a wax resist. Everything in ceramics is problem solving to me. I'm sure I could do a wax resist of sorts and get those white dots like worked in there at the same time. I don't care. Sometimes I just throw caution to the wind and see what happens. From good old Tuckers, I got this, who makes this? I don't even know who makes this. It's like this really lovely pink celadon glaze. So I should add that to things. Oh, it's Amico. It's Amico. So I'm crossing the streams. Can you do that? Are you allowed to do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, except for I did not prep for this, I'm going to find something that I can pour a little bit of this into, and then I'm actually going to dab some of that glaze like right on top of the neck. And so instead of being purple, it's going to be pink. But again, if I don't like it, of course I can't erase it by any stretch of the imagination. Let's see what I got here to pour this into. I'm gonna reach over here. I'm gonna reach around, and I've got an unused diner mug that I can do this. So I have a little bit more maneuverability. So this is a Celadon Cone 5-6 glaze. It's quite lovely. And what happens when you pile it on top of this cottontail glaze a la Mako is that you get like this weird Phaco Maiolica situation. And I love it. I love it. And it's totally unpredictable. I don't know what's necessarily going to happen, but that's like part of the joy of ceramics for me. You learn some of the rules, and then you unlearn some of the rules, and then you make your own rules. I also like Bob Ross. Remember Bob Ross and his painting? Like the whole notion of happy accidents. That's kind of fun. So what you can't see is I'm just going to click on my computer there so I can see what's going on there. So, and I'm just going to take a sponge. I'm hoping that this regular sponge is going to be okay. But what I'm going to do is just, oh, it's going to be so nasty. I'm just going to dab it on there. Can you see that? Let me bring that closer. Let me bring that closer because that's just extra special. I really get off on the idea of I don't know what's going to happen with this piece, and then I bring it out of the kiln, and it either totally works out, or you pivot, and I hate that word during the pandemic, but I guess you do that, and you figure out like a new situation. So my makeup skills are limited to putting on lipstick occasionally and a little bit of eyeliner, but my ceramic skills, huzzah, right? So this will just be a little bit of layer one of what's going on here. And I'll try and get it, I don't want to say even, because I like the mishaps. And sometimes I wonder, you know, when these guys and gals were sitting in ceramic factories and they were like probably busting this stuff out going like, this is the most boring shit in the world, like they don't have an artistic hand in anything. Like this is a little bit of an ode to them too. So that's that, and I'll do that to the same, and I'm just looking at the picture there. And what I can do at the end is actually kind of go back, like if I find, you know, I've gone over the eyeball and I want it to be more white per se, or whatever color, or maybe it's going to be pinky, who knows. I'll go back in there with China paint and this and that. Likewise, would they be called cowls on top? I'm just going to give them a light job too and see where that goes. What I might do at this point is actually bust open another color and double dip, double dab down and create kind of a depth of things there. There's a color called Wine About It that might be fun, that might give it a little bit of depth. So the point is, again, not to recreate exactly what I'm seeing on the internet page there, but to give it a little bit of a twist to things. The base of the majority of the body is like white, and then there's like a black swath with polka dots and a black swath with polka dots that I might actually just, you know what, I might actually use this product, again, not paid, but it's a Spectrum underglaze. I might actually dab that on. I don't know how it will actually look like sitting over top of it because it's a true underglaze. I should say the other thing about the Mako Stricken Coat is that it's self-glazing. Glazing. So you can fire it to 04 and it starts to get its own sheen to it. You can fire it to cone 06 and it gets more sheenier, so to speak. So if what I do find with the Mako Stricken Coat blacks is that they burn out a little bit at cone 5, cone 6, so they actually are a little bit more of a toasty brown. Not undesirable, just not what I want for this piece. So I might go with the Spectrum and then slap a little clear glaze on his butt, on their butts. As far as the bottom goes, what I'm going to do is be quite liberal, and I want to say, can I say painterly? Because painterly sounds loose and gestural, and maybe you are a finicky painter, as I am at many times. But if I'm going to be spending the time roughing things out over 10 firings, I got nothing but time. I'm also going to turn this, if you just bear with me one sec, I'm also going to turn this down a little bit, this light down, so you can see a little bit of what's going on there. So, I don't know what this is called. Some kind of green. Mako Stricken Coat green. But if I'm looking at the old screen here, I'm actually just going to blop it on there. Quite, again, the word would be liberally, as that's kind of the way I lean in a lot of my life now. So I'll just rough that out. So there'll be a little bit of green, and there's some branches in there. There's some flowers in there. In the original picture, they're very, very light, very, very, very muted. But I kind of like the idea of painting these things as if you're like, certainly not drunk or anything like that, but if you're like, everything's a little bit off kilter. So it's like there's a link to tradition and history, but that now there's an ample opportunity for reinterpretation, which I find kind of kinky and sexy. So when you see the final piece, it'll be like, oh, I maybe recognize this, even if you don't know anything about the original piece. You'd be like, oh, this seems like a historical piece and a hysterical piece, but there's something a little bit different about it. I wonder who made this. Who made that? So I'm going to do that. I think I'm also going to, draw in some of that Celadon pink here. I've got another pink that I like. It's called Melancholy, because why would you call a ceramic color just something boring? But what I think I'm going to actually do is pull a little bit of the pink that's dabbed on, and the light denotes it to being like a pretty hard contrast here. But again, I'm going to dab on this black and white daub paint situation in it a little bit. But with like the flowers down below, I think it's kind of I don't want to say nice. It's just like my own aesthetics. But I like to repeat what's going on in certain parts, kind of like cooking, like what's going on in certain parts, it gets regurgitated over different parts. So as at least a base, so it draws your eyes around, and your eyes kind of go like, oh yeah, oh I saw that up top there somewhere. So again, not a particularly, it's a pretty slap happy sloppy application. I dig it. I am 90% of the time pretty happy with what comes out of the kiln, because I'm actually not happy with what comes out of the kiln. And I'm like, oh, now I gotta go back and figure out what to do. But again, it's problem solving. So you can see over maybe this flower here, there's actually green that spilled over. I'm just gonna plop this pink Celadon glaze over top of there, and then we'll see what it turns out like, right? We'll see what it turns out like. Also, there's no problem with adjusting history. So in the like on the screen, the piece, the baby tail feathers here are actually a continuation of black glaze. But I'm gonna just, because I feel like it, dab some of this pink stuff on here, and then maybe I'll like revisit it when it comes out of the kiln to see what it looks like. Maybe it'll get some, like maybe this will be polka dotted black around here, and then over here this will be pink with black polka dots. This is how my brain works. I think this sounds really hoity-toity, but I don't know. I've just been doing this for so many years that I used to really get caught up on like what's right and what's wrong, and now everything's right. There's very few pieces that I actually check out, that I actually like smash and check out. So everything's again like I delight in problem solving, whether it be in cooking, like, oh, that got a little burnt, or oh, that didn't turn out the na. What can we turn that into? Or what can you turn the leftovers into if it didn't turn out exactly what you want it to be? So part of it is that I like to leave things up to chance, and that's what I'll do here. So a few more dabs of this and that of the pink that will go on there. And when I turn the camera off, oh, let me just quickly, like, oh, under his butt, there's like some flower arranging to do. You got to make your butt smell good, right? No. And then the background of this is apparently quite stark white, but I'm really happy with these drips and bloops and block glazes that go on there. So what I'll do is I'll just rinse this off very quickly, and then here's like a sort of a weepy straw color, and this is where the layering comes in, so to speak. So there are little branch parts that I've carved in and added onto here. Is that a flower? I don't know. We'll turn that into a little bit of a like a combo branch and flower part. Oh, there's another bird. So I'll just add a little bit of that to there. Oh, and his legs, or her legs, I guess it's a hand. Let's add a little bit of that to there, so it sloops up there. And I just kind of keep pivoting. All the while, what am I listening to? I actually, sadly, I didn't want to record today because I got so obsessed with getting the podcast stuff done yesterday, but you know, I needed to be in the studio and get a little bit of something done. Otherwise, I was going to go a little bit nuts. So One more thing that I'm going to add here is, oh, I didn't mix it up, so it'll just be one sec. It's a little bit of a darker brown. I've got three browns to add to things. So I've got the weepy brown on here, the straw brown, and then I'm just going to come back over. Do I wait till it dries? I don't really care. You know, I like the muckiness of it. I like the haphazardness. I like that even though everything is frozen in time as far as after, you know, during and after you fire something, you can still create brushstrokes and things. You think of all the abstract expressionist-esque ceramic artists, the Peter Volkoses and Jim Melchers and such, and it's like all these gestures are frozen in time. So that's kind of what I go for. There comes a point where I just stop and I go, okay, that's that. We gotta fire it. We gotta see where it goes. We got like many more firings to go. Oops. The wiener dog's gonna be mad at me because I just spilled glaze on the floor. What I actually am gonna do too is, even though the background is stark white historically, I'm gonna go in there with a little bit of blue, and I'm gonna plop it in there, and I'm gonna let it run down. So after I fire it, you're gonna see like this weird weepy sepia mess. It's gonna be like melted ice cream. And again, that I know that will happen because just over time, I think I've been working with these Mako stroking coats for the past 10 years, so to speak. And not that they gotta send me anything, I'm happy to pay through the nose to get shipped through Canada. But I was happy to find out that there's a Montreal-based company called Ciel that is distributing them. So I'll be happy to order from them. And actually also Sounding Stone out of Winnipeg is great too. They sell bigger bottles. You can't win for trying. So basically, in the end, what the bottom of this looks like is like a weird melty ice cream layered cake. And there's something about it. Let me see if I can move this a little bit closer to you. That's I have no idea where it's going to go, and only by a little bit of experience can I like sort of ascertain like what's going to happen, where it's going to melt, and where it's going to flow. I hope it looks really disturbing, so that I can go back in there with more glaze, and then do a little bit more, and then get in there with China paints and such, and of course, not decals on this piece, no decals, but China paints and gold lusters for sure. So anyway, this is where Henny Hen and I are going to leave you. And then we're going to go, there's like a ceramic symposium going on this weekend, in the weekend of March 4th, 5th, 6th, or 5th, 6th, 7th. And so I want to go listen to some ceramic artists on clay voices. And if you get a chance to do that too, you might want to. And actually all of that is archived through their Instagram at Clay Voices. You can like click on the picture and click on their tag, and then go to the artist's Instagram feeds, and then you can hear them talk for an hour about all sorts of things under the sun. So that's exciting. So I must go do that because that's happening now. So I can paint and learn a little bit at the same time. I hope your Sunday was a happy one, and I hope you're getting lots done or nothing done. Spring is trying to spring out there, and so we're going to also dash outside and enjoy a little bit of that. But we'll see you soon, and when like a more fuller episode of Electric Lady Orchestra launches, then I'll keep you posted. Okay, bye for now.